Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the first day of September 2024. I'm going to be reading part of the book that has been added by Phil Langdon recently, the book of Enoch, chapter 5. I don't know if I'll get through this chapter because it's a long chapter, as Phil has added it to it. It's called The Secrets of Enoch, chapter 5. This is translated by F. Is it Frank? Anderson. And so we're going to look at this particular work here as Phil is sharing. And thank you for being here. So Enoch 2, this is basically, and let me kind of give you a background of this book. The reason why Christianity doesn't deal with these books, most of them are non-Amadi scriptures, but not only that, they don't want to deal with the issues because it kind of messes up their whole perspective, meaning simply they look at everything literally. They believe there's a literal Jesus. They believe that there was a literal John. They believe that there was a literal Noah. They believe all this stuff, but it's a belief, you see. They believe there's a Sodom and Gomorrah. They don't understand simply is these are fictitious stories. You see, that's how they wrote books back then with the pagans. The pagans wrote, they didn't write what we call the literal interpretation of Genesis. They just didn't write that way because it was a clever way of hiding the truth only for those who seek after it. That's the real reason. That is the whole reason why, why it's written in not fictitious, but not a literal interpretation. This is where everything is a stumbling block for those who are in Christianity. They don't understand these symbols in their church. They look at them literally, you see, and that's not what they were at one time. Now, the problem is, though, the priests, the pastors have no idea a lot of times what these are, or either they've been told what they are. You see. So this is Enoch 2, base chapter 1. We'll see how far we get into this particular book, chapter I should say, because it's a long chapter. I think it's roughly 70 pages. So I'm not going to be able to get all that done today for sure. So thank you for being here, as I said earlier. Just want to give a background because the problem is simply that people just do not understand, and most will not understand. But we offer this sharing to others that maybe those out there are looking for a different perspective and maybe looking for really actually the truth that's hidden in a bale, basically in a hay, or either a field that's a diamond. There was a wise man, a great artificer, or what we call skilled craftsman, or slash designer. And the Lord conceived love for him and received him, that is, in salvation. So what he means, simply received him, means that simply has salvation. That he should behold the uppermost dwelling. The uppermost dwelling of you is your head, which he would simply say spiritual zero, meaning that no longer, when we say spiritual zero, what we're saying simply is we're no longer on the timeline. We're no longer on what we call, we enter what we call a timeless state, you see, and be a eyewitness of the wise and great and inconceivable and immutable realm of God's Almighty. And then he has it in brackets, the abyss and heaven, in brackets, of the very wonderful and glorious and bright and many-eyed, EYED, station of the Lord's servants, which are the cloud of angels, in brackets, and an inaccessible throne of the Lord, meaning behind the flaming sword, guarding the way to heaven, end quote. Sorry, not end quote, but in brackets. And of the degrees and manifestations of the incorporeal hosts, and of the ineffable ministrations of the multitude of the elements. The elements simply are the archons. and of the various apparitions and inexpressible singing of the hosts of cherubim and of the boundless light. So Enoch has found salvation. He becomes an angel. When you find salvation within you, you become an angel, not what Christianity is teaching you. They say you've been born again. Not differential, and born again means simply is just a differential. Suddenly it's like I'm no longer in the literal interpretation, but now I'm in a different realm. I've been born again, but in a spiritual way. The word artificer, I'm sorry, we went through that. I'm sorry, and continue on here. What the word artificer means skilled craftsman, and refers to the angelical persona called Enoch. Enoch, since this book is called Enoch. What skills does Enoch possess if he is a great and skilled craftsman? The craft is learning that leads to salvation. That's what we're all here for, folks. We're here to make heaven within us. Not on outside of that. It's impossible. Don't you see what's going on around you? You see all the chaos in this world, all the wars, all this. Are you really seeing the real? You're just looking at things in a literal interpretation here. You're not understanding simply is that's what keeps you from coming to the truth. Many people out here are trying to quote unquote save humanity. That's impossible. You need to save yourself. You need to be actually selfish in finding the truth. Enoch is a master, quote, master of the craft, end quote. That is, meaning he is an angel. Because angels are masters of salvation. Because they mastered it. They discovered it and they mastered it. And they're a lot of times are trying to quote unquote to share that to others here. Not all of them are here. Angels are not all here. Okay. The next sentence is long and confirms that Enoch had been loved by God through the reception of the Holy Spirit, that he is an eyewitness to the cloud of heaven in the infinite abyss. The very wonderful and glorious and bright and many-eyed, that is beings, that is station, cloud of the Lord's servants, being the angels. The cloud as the throne of God, inaccessible to all unless they can tame the flaming sword that guards the way. The flaming sword mentioned by the author is a coded version of the keys to heaven. The first key is God's Holy Spirit that floods us with his coal fire. The second key is our entrance into the uppermost dwelling of the abyss where the cloud is, which is called Jesus Christ. So when we hear the name of Jesus Christ, we think in the literal terms that there was a literal man, such and such. No, there never was. And I've shared the 16 crucified saviors in the past, sharing that book, because reality simply is, if you look at that, these are stories that have been handed down by the pagans long ago in order to find the truth. Why would you think there'd be 16 crucified saviors, folks? Even one, they don't use Jesus Christ, as they say, the last one here, but in reality, simply is they've used always something in the past, a different name, representing basically a savior. The great sword of truth lives forever at zero, meaning zero means timelessness. That's where it happens. When this moment happens to you inside your head, it is timeless. You're not able to discern the period of time that happens that when this takes place. You're in a quote unquote a phase, 0 point. Your time is not moving in that vacuum. You know, you have this idea. It's like a trance. And that's what Phil says. It simply was a trance that took place with him. The second key to our interest is in the uppermost dwelling of the abyss, where the cloud called Jesus Christ, the great sword of truth, lives forever zero. Sorry about that, guys. Get all wrapped up here. Together, the two keys of fire and truth become a flaming sword. end quote, that guards the inaccessible entrance to heaven. Why is that? Why is it, it guards to keep people from getting in? Right. Those who have not done the work. In relation to the cloud, the archons, that is, the authorities of reality, are the key ingredients of spiritual reality. The cloud is made of 4 elements together as the 5th, and the abyss is called simply is ether, same as the cloud. So you have these 4 elements that we all know about: earth, water, air, fire. They're all here. We know that. The square of the squaring of the circle, well, those are the 4 elements. It eventually leads to the triangle to the top that leads to ether, which is where your ascension takes place. This was another way of trying to explain what you need to do in order to get there. And these 4 elements have been all around. This has been, for me, I don't want to say millions, but I don't know how long, but been long ago, these things were always talked about: earth, water, air, and fire. And they were worshipped as though they were some type of gods by the pagans. The pagans are not stupid, folks. You may think they are, but they're not. The cherubim do not sing. They are the cloud itself, born in God's infinite pulse, which may be taken as a blast from Gabriel's horn, whose atmosphere is akin to, quote, singing, end quote, at 0. Second part, at that time, he said, when my 165th year was completed, I beget my son Methuselah, or Mathuselah, one who was sent / man of the dart, D-A-R-T, in brackets, 3, verse 3. After this too, I lived 200 years. And I assume he's got R/head. I don't know what that means right now, so I'm sorry about that. And completed of all the years of my life, being 365 years. There's a clue. Hello? Hello, 365. How many days in the year? 365. What's he talking about? He talked about when he's 165 years, was it completed, I beget my son Methuselah. And again, this is fictional. But there are quote-unquote clues along the deal here, as though someone left the crumbs as they quote-unquote went further into the trail, wherever they're looking for, and they leave these crumbs or something to show other people where to follow. And this is what they're doing. According to this text, Enoch dies at the ripe old age of 365 years old. This is what people think. Wow, those people lived a long time ago. Wow, 365 years. That's, there are other people lived longer than that. And yet, there's not people living that long now. Hello? Hello? It's not literal. Seeing as nobody lives that long in reality, are we being directed to something else? What does the number 365 signify? Then readers should recognize this number immediately as the number of days in the year. However, the text says Enoch was 365 years, not days. What does this tell us? It tells us that Enoch is characterizing himself as the angel of the great work that takes the sun, S-U-N, a year, to traverse, that is encoded as the 12 seasons, or the 12 zodiac signs of the complete wheel, and the 12 apostles, etc. And these are all inside your head, the 12 noetic signs, nerves. In fact, any group of 12 with esoteric significance, such as the 12 tribes of Israel, ultimately represents the 12 intellectual forces of the brain where the Son of God is born. Using the designation of years as opposed to days reveals longevity and old age, which old age is a reference to saying number 4, basically in Gospel of Thomas, when we ascend. In a similar way to using the number 1,000 as a way of simply referring to a long time, end quote. Of course, The number 1000 is also known as the conqueror. Its use depends on context. Enoch is simply telling us that his character in the book is as that of an angel. That's what he's speaking of. He's conquered over the flesh. You see, he's conquered the flesh. He's realized why he's here, because simply is he's here for a spiritual reason. That's what we all are here for. We're here for a spiritual reason. Nothing else. Not to get stuff. You know, nothing wrong with that. But that's not the main goal in life. People work for the man all their lives, never recognizing what they're here for, not even understand what the purpose of their life is. And they'll do that many times, which is part of God's grace, his goodness. He allows you to come back. You fail, probably many of us have failed thousands of times. Who knows? That's not important. The important part simply is to come to the point simply is if you understand or are pursuing this, you need to be pursuing it deeply. The number 165 is not a letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Yes, there are only 27, I think, right? When we find numbers like this, not rounded out as a multiple of 10, we only need to look up their geometry. The Hebrew geometry of 165 means, and I would say Nakudah, Nekudah, meaning point. The center point of Genesis, meaning Eden, where creation began at 0. Are we surprised? We should not be by now. Enoch has told us that the begot a child, that is a divine child, when he was 165 years old. This means Enoch became an angel when he was at the point of 0. In so doing, he begot a divine son, S-O-N, the cloud, and called him Methuselah, which means simply one who was sent by God to save us from the afflictions of physical reality and salvation. So these key words which are involved here, I was trying to find my book, but I think I moved it somewhere else on my table here. Sorry about that. When he was sent by God to save from the afflictions of, okay, the first 3 verses of Enoch then are there to introduce Enoch as the character of an ascended angel. Methuselah is also the cloud product of what we call Enoch's salvation. Verse 4, on the first day of the first month, I was in my house alone and was resting on my couch and slept. And when I was asleep, great distress came up into my heart, and I was weeping with my eyes in sleep. And I could not understand what the distress was or what would happen to me. Verse 6, and there appeared to me 2 men, exceedingly big, so that I never saw such on earth. Their faces were shining like the sun. Their eyes, too, were like a burning light. And from their lips was fire coming forth, with clothing and singing of various kinds, in appearance of what we call purple. Their wings were brighter than gold, their hands whiter than snow. So Phil asked the question, who are these 2 men? Why are these 2 and not just 1 or several men? Why number 2, you see? Because Enoch is being visited by the Holy Spirit, followed by his salvation moment. The 2 men are the cloud, which is dual in nature. You know, we all are dual in nature. You see, we are physical and we are spiritual. We're also divided, duality, like Jesus and Judas, or Cain and Abel, or Osiris and Seth, etc. These are 2 different, they're 2 characters representing the duality or the nature of you. It's also talking about your salvation moment. You were once this person, now you become someone else. That's how I see it. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing here. So the description of the men, again, quote, never saw such on earth, end quote. Characterize the cloud. Not people. So in reality, yes, no. Never saw was on the earth. So in other words, he's saying this never takes place. In other words, this is not man. These are not These are not physical people, you see. They're giving you clues. Quote, their hands were whiter than snow. Well, that's kind of interesting. Because they are the cloud, see, whose 32 hands are truly whiter than snow. The cloud's wings, that is, beams, are brighter than gold because they are pure, brilliant white. So what he's talking about in the 32 hands are the beams that come out from the cloud as he experienced himself approximately 10 years ago. The cloud wings, beams are brighter than gold because they are pure, brilliant white. The fire coming forth from their lips is the same holy fire as the flaming sword of Enoch, chapter 1. I should say 1. That guards the way to heaven, the sword of truth. End quote. The color purple is symbolic of royalty and also of angel nature. Why is that? Because red and blue are mixed. What do you come up with, folks? And if you remember the deal with the 12 disciples, including plus 12, making 13, you remember that Jesus is clothed in red and blue. And red representing blood, and blue representing water. Both those come together and they become purple. And that is really revealing again the whole idea of being changed into an angel. The two become purple, the red and blue, the blood and the water. And so what it means here simply is he elaborates a little bit more as I've spoken here, relates directly to the cloud as the slain lamb, which bleeds symbolically red with the color of lamb's blood, and the waters of life, which is blue, with this is colors of water. And when you put red and blue, the cloud of two, as is two men colors, as two men, that is two colors, as it is physical and spiritual aspects. And then that becomes, guess what? Purple, royalty, angel. Verse 7, they were standing at the head of my couch and began to call me by my name. 8, and I arose from my sleep. That is, he rose from his sleep in a physical state and became an angel. He ascended. He had salvation now. The word salvation today has been completely misgiven or misunderstood. You see, as the church has proven itself to be looking at what we call literal interpretation of scriptures and then missed the whole point of what these guys were trying to say. And these words were from pagans. Again, folks, hello, pagans. And it's a downright derogative term towards those who were not Christians. It was a way of seeing these people as being inferior as Christianity moved away from what we call the pagan links to it and began to look at the literal interpretation. They missed out on the opportunity of truth and also missed out the opportunity of salvation. And saw clearly these two men standing in front of me, as is in the cloud. In verse 9, and I saluted them and was seized with fear. That is, fear meaning reverence and respect, not fear as though, oh, no, completely different ballgame. And the appearance of my face was changed from terror. And those men said to me, quote, verse 10, have courage, Enoch. Do not fear. The eternal God sent us to thee, and lo, thou shalt today ascend with us into heaven. And what is he talking? Is that a physical manifestation here again? No. Nothing to do with that. Heaven is always inside your head. That's where you truly are born again. And thou shalt tell thy sons and all thy household all that they shall do without thee on earth in thy house. That is as a teacher. And let no one seek thee till the Lord returns thee to them. That is in a bracket here, after the salvation moment. Verse 11. And I made haste to obey them, and went out from my house, and made to the doors as it was ordered of me, and summoned my son Methuselah, that is, the one who he is sent, or the man of the dark. Again, by Phil sharing this. And Regem and Gedidah, that is Arad, I-R-A-D, meaning dragon, and make known to them all the marvels those men had told me. The way Enoch finds these two men would have us think he is having a real experience in life, because he mentions reposing on his couch. A very modern sounding scenario, we would say, with either two angels in front of him or two aliens. Which is it? It's neither. None of one of them. There's no, again, it's no physical aspect here, folks. There is no angels here. These are all written in a way to reveal the truth, what you need to be doing in your life. You need to pursue these things. So there is no, this is what, it's kind of comical, but anyway. The two men represent the cloud of Enoch's anointing. The couch associated with Enoch's visit is a way of referring to how we are so relaxed and reposed in salvation that we may as well be lying down. Yeah, this is the point of being still. Be still and know that I'm God. That verse in the Bible, that means simply to be still and realize that the point simply is, in that stillness, you have the salvation moment takes place within you. Again, it doesn't take place in the old stinking church, neither. God doesn't live in a church, folks. He never has. But we've been so programmed to think that way. We must get out of that perspective. The two men represent the cloud of Enoch's anointing. The couch associated with Enoch is a way of referring to how we are so relaxed and reposed in salvation that we may as well be lying down. As I said, this is called samadhi. This is what he's talking about, the first key to heaven. Most people don't know what that's about either. This is the first thing that happened to Phil while he was at Angkor Wat, and he is in a trance. He doesn't even realize what's going on. He didn't create this. He didn't produce it, you see. But this place was built at Angkor Wat for this situation when someone is ready to ascend. Long ago, those in the past built buildings to represent something spiritual. If you notice at Angkor Wat, if you've ever been there, they show the four pillars, so to speak, and the one at the very top. Again, that's revealing the four aspects of fire, water, air, and earth. And the very high is revealing the ascension deal, if you'll notice that, because it's ascended above the four. This represents the ether again. So the first key to heaven, and Achan to sleeping while remaining awake, in talking to his children on his return. Enoch is, in fact, talking to himself as a way of recording how we return to the body. The three children at the moment are Enoch's central, emotional, and intellectual content. Achan to the three sons of Noah. The three main central positions across the body: the intellect, the emotional, and the senses. Chapter 2. The instruction, how Enoch instructed his sons. Listen to me, my children. I know not whither I go or what will befall me. Now, therefore, my children, I tell you, turn not from God before the face of the vain, who made not heaven and earth, for these shall perish, and those who worship them. And may the Lord make confident your heart in the fear, that is, in respect of him. And now, my children, let no one think to seek me until the Lord returns me to you. So the sons of Enoch are the same as the three sons of Noah, and represent the intellectual, the emotional, and the sensual content of our physical body. Again, this is not literal. Please get your head around all this, because in reality, the idea of looking at everything literally is a stumbling block for you to find truth. In Eastern Standard, that is, these three issues are called sattva, that is the intellect, rajas, meaning emotion and desire, and tamas, T-A-M-A-S, is sensuality. According to the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, I should say, the persona of God called Krishna tells us how living with these, quote, gunas produce relative consequences. If we live for sattva, that is mindfulness, we rise higher. Because in reality, when we do this, we're showing that we already have the inclination of seeking higher truth. We rise higher towards the goal of oneness. That's what these four elements are, and then eventually lead to the top, the square and the circle. And the pyramids are an example of that spiritual ascension that should take place with people. If we live for the emotional content of our lives, we do not progress. Of course not. If we only live for the lower senses and spend a little time with thought, we sink even lower, naturally. With three gunas come three major consequences, only one of which produces heaven, that is the head. You know, there's a song out there that was done long ago, and it's been popular, come back popular, I guess probably 15 or 20 years ago. But it reveals what the song's all about. It's all about the base. And what does the base represent? It surely isn't the head, is it? That's nothing to do with the head. The base represents sensuality. That's what it means. All about the base. That's what the song was talking about. So it shows basically what it calls, again, the four elements here in the graph. And he speaks of it simply as the lower ones are what are called the senses, the desire, and the emotions, which is up here in your heart area, and then the intellect. And they were revealed that, I guess, in the Indian perspective, is in three ways. It would be simply the tamas is down the bottom, the rajas would be the heart area, and the sattva would be the head in the Eastern perspective. Enoch is informing his own body then that he is going to leave it behind for a while until he comes back from salvation. That's part of the ascension moment, but it's also reveals simply what's the most important part of your body. That's why it's at the top part of your body. It's very obvious. It's where all the thinking goes on. It's where everything takes place. So your not emotions, but reality, how you think, what your so quote unquote traumas that happened to you in the past. There's a memory up there. There's a memory bank that records all this stuff, you see. What's happened in your back when you passed and such in your memories. It's more than that. He reminds us, the reader, not to waste time on those who waste time and ignore truth. Yeah, that's the sad situation with mankind. Only dedication to truth, not time wasting, will produce salvation. It has to be a single perspective as an arrow, and you aim for the bullseye. These are all synonyms of finding ascension. You see, the stories long ago are revealing the truth. Chapter 3 of Enoch's assumption, how the angels took him into the first heaven. It came to pass when Enoch had told his sons that the angel took him on their wings and bore him up onto the first heaven, which is called Keter, or the crown, the sapphire, and placed him on the clouds. And there I looked, and again I looked higher, and saw the ether, that is the abyss. And they placed me on the first heaven, and showed me a very great sea, which is the abyss, greater than the earthly sea. Now that Enoch had told his sons he's going away for about, maybe 10 minutes, when the, quote, angels took him on their wings and bore him up onto the first heaven and placed him on the clouds. These are all metaphors, folks. These are metaphors of revealing truth. This is another figure of speech concerning the moment we fly upward in ascension to find the abyss. Same thing is represented even in Jesus Christ. It says he ascended to heaven. You see, think about that. Okay, he ascended to heaven. We all think this physical aspect of him simply going up to heaven and ascending. Is it? Is it really? Really? This is another figure of speech concerning the moment we fly upward in ascension to find the abyss. Now the universe has been wiped away from our view and experience. Yeah, everything's gone. When you're in the moment of this happening, it's the abyss. There's nothing. You're in this trance deal that you're not even aware of what's going on outside of you. The flight up is simply compared with riding angels' wings, because we know we become an angel at this moment. In this moment, I should say. Enoch, quote, looks higher, end quote, by arriving in the abyss, which is, quote, greater than the earthly sea because of its infinity and extent. In other words, it's just vast. Okay, it's just vast. Chapter 4. Of the angels ruling the stars, they brought before my face the elders and rulers of the stellar order, that is the cloud, and showed me 200 angels. Okay, 200's got to be something important here. Numbers are important in the Hebrew language. Which is the cloud, again, who rule the stars and their services to the heavens and fly with their wings and come round all those who sail, S-A-I-L. So chapter 4 is not what we think again. The elders and rulers of the stellar orders is none other than the cloud and nothing else. The elders are the 24 elders, which is spoken in the book of Revelations, or Revelation, I should say, that constitute the body of the cloud and its unification of spirit and energy. Of course, the cloud is also the, quote, rulers, which are the archons of the stellar orders, end quote, as the universal creator. The cloud is all of archons at once, being their chief as well as it all the elders. 200 angels. 200 is represented by the letter R in the Hebrew language and means wickedness associated with the creator, and head refers to the cloud as the redeemer born in the head, or the spiritual element, meaning air. These are all beautifully done. Okay. So the letter, and it has it in Hebrew, says it's simply called Resh, R-E-S-H, also represents wickedness, as the word for a wicked person, and then it has Rasha, R-A-S-H-A, begins with a Resh. When a wicked person wants to correct their bad behavior and return being a good person, he goes a step back. There he, quote, meets, end quote, the letter Kaf, or Kaf, which is 100, which, as we said, represents holiness. Here we see again that even the order of the Hebrew letters is important and has significance. Quote, the idea of the possibility of returning from wickedness that is represented by this letter, which is Resh, R-E-S-H. See, remember the Hebrew language, the letters represent also words. Far more complicated than most people realize. Most who do the Hebrew translation of the Bible are not aware of that. In fact, I doubt even one knows that. So when you study Hebrew as you're going in seminary, such and such, they would never teach you this. They teach you what the letter is, the sound of it, and you pronounce it. That would be the only thing they would teach you. They would not go into anything deeper because they don't know. They don't know. You can't expect them. You can't always blame them always because they've never studied it. They think they know it all because simply as that's what they've been told, and it's been passed down generation after generation after generation. Nothing changes. So this letter teaches us that in each and every person there is a spark of holiness. Of course there is. Yes, because we come from spirit. Well, we're similar to Cain. Even when a person is in this lowest spiritual place, he still has that holiness within him. Therefore, it is forbidden to remind someone who has returned from their bad ways of his past sins, since this post is erased and no longer exists. End quote. This is from HebrewToday.com. Of course, why would you bring it back up? That's why it says simply you've been cleaned in Scripture or cleansed. We don't go back there anymore because it's been dealt with. It no longer is there. You don't have to be reminded of it because you're moving further up because you're an angel now. That's not important anymore. The ascension to ether, which was written as ether, E-T-H-E-R, in Enoch, as the abyss, is immediately with salvation and the place of the cloud where it is. That is, quote, comes round all those who sail, S-A-I-L, end quote. I thought it was an interesting word being shared there, sail, in the abyss. You see, we are sailors as angels and members of the great, quote, Borg of millions of years, the great boat of God, which is heaven, another synonym for representing heaven. This is why people, when they see this stuff, they start not seeing this as and they don't understand because they can't understand because simply they don't know the meaning behind the words. And Phil has been very kind to actually share this whole information to us. Now, you wonder why you're here at this time, living at this time. Maybe it's time for you to ascend. Maybe it's time for you to look into these things. You have the greatest opportunity because, frankly, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. It really is. So, in the endless sky of the abyss, when we compare the cloud and his beams with a boat, which is the beams are the oars, I should say, protruding from his hull, because that's the way they used to, quote unquote, get around. If you look at the Phoenicians and the Egyptians, they have these oars outside their boats. And I think I don't know if that's true. I think, yes, the same thing also with the Norsemen. The upper part of Europe, that is the Scandinavian countries, I'm trying to remember. Chapter 5 of how the angels keep the storehouse of the snow. And here I looked down and saw the treasure houses of the snow. And that's kind of interesting, the word snow being here, really weird. So what is that all about? Is it about purity? Cleanness? I don't know. We'll find out. And the angels who keep their terrible storehouses and the clouds whence they come out and to which they go. So he's explaining here, there's something here. Let's see how far I'm into this thing here because I don't want to, it's like, see someone mentioned here, pseudo history. If they tell you you have rights, you don't. Okay, well, this is not about rights here. It's something a little bit more heavier than that. They tell you Jesus is God. He was a human being. Well, actually, he wasn't even a human being. He never lived. It's just a way of a story here. This is what I'm trying to point out to people. If they tell you the world is round, it's flat. Well, the world is round. Sorry about that. If they tell you Adam was the beginning of humanity, he was an atom. Yeah, I've heard of that, or alien. Yes, sir. And Adam's bloodline ended with Seth and Ethiopia and Cain and Babylonia before the angels. We're not talking about history here, sir. This is nothing to do with history. I hope you understand that. Hope that I haven't broken your balloon, but it is not about history. And that's where another stumbling block is. That's how many Christians look at things and they say, oh, this is what happened such and such years. But they can't find the Sodom and Gomorrah. They can't find it. This is all in your head. It has nothing to do with the physical aspects or history. And that is a stumbling block for most people. Thank you for sharing pseudo history. I'm not trying to beneath you or anything of that nature, but I will speak truth. Angels are said to come and go from the cloud as they go about their business in creation to help those not saved yet. And so the storehouses potentially of the cloud is said to be terrible. You see, when active, that is the creative principle, because creation is automatic and not thought out like the spirit world. Anything automatic only mimics intelligence, like the universe, but it takes intelligence to set up like the universe. In this sense, the universe is an automatic product of the great unification of the upper and lower worlds of spirit and energy. As Phil explains again. Again, it is so critical for you to understand that what you read and what you've been told to do with history and literalization is simply a stumbling block for you to not find the truth. That's what Phil's sharing. And it's not my opinion here, okay? This is not my opinion. Chapter 6, quote, of the dew and of the olive oil and various flowers. So what he's talking about here, this sounds like, whoa, what is he talking about? So these are all representations, not of the dew, because it doesn't make any sense literally. It doesn't. It can't. And this is the reason also why the Christians will not put this book in the Bible. You see, they would have troubles with this whole thing. They wouldn't know how to explain it. It would make them look ignorant to their literal parishioners. So they showed me the treasure house of the dew, like oil of the olive, and the appearance of its form as of all the flowers of the earth. Further, many angels guarding the treasure houses of these things, and how they are made to shut and open. So the treasure house of dew suggests water, like the cloud. Again, they're just giving you all. These Jewish people who wrote this stuff are phenomenally smart. They're enormously smart. Enormously. Way beyond any of us. Because they told these stories only for those who sought that. If someone puts up doesn't believe this, then that's their choice. It's another stumbling block. It's like a steeplechase. When you're running in a race, and this is similar to what I would call about your life, and you're brought up in what I call certain things that come up with you, like a steeplechase, so you must jump over this particular thing that's happened to your life, trauma, whatever it is, to get further down the road. Or in the road, it's not talking about a physical aspect, it's talking about you becoming more mature as a human being. And also to understand something, all these things that do happen to you are a way of testing you too, and see if you have the spirit in seeking these things and seeking these with all your effort. So the treasure house of the dew, in quotes, suggests water like a cloud. So why is the cloud in its form compared with, quote, all the flowers of the earth? Because the locations and spread of the beams around the cloud surface conforms to every single budding plant on earth that shows us the, quote, golden ratio in their spread of seeds, like a pineapple, for example. The, quote, many angels are the angels of the cloud, not because they are visible to any, but because this text is educating you, helping you to understand. Before we carry on with the text that is in chapter 7, the reader needs to know before we get there that Enoch is going through a series of events that takes him through the, quote, 10 heavens. And he shows a little piece of this. And if anybody wants to read this book, read this online, I've already shared it on my Facebook page, but you can also go to Phil Langdon and download the book for free. It's not about making money here. We're not talking about money. We're talking about truth. This allows no excuse for those who seek the truth. If you're charging someone, and if you want to buy a book, that's your prerogative. But the ability nowadays is you can simply download an electronic book without even being charged. That's what Phil Langdon's offering. So there is no excuse for you not coming to the truth. You see? You could say, well, he charged me such and such, I didn't have the money, whatever, which is what people would say. Well, that's not what this is about. You don't have any excuse here. You have the ability to learn if you want to. If you don't, it's not your time. You'll come back here and reincarnate. That's just the way it works. That's the beauty of God and his own goodness to you to allow you to do it again and again and again and again. How many times it takes. That's the beauty of God's grace and mercy. So before we carry on with such and such, I got off tangent here. Sorry. One wonders what or where these, quote, heavens really are, because there is no mention of them anywhere else in sacred texts as such. Well, not quite like this. There are 10 heavens simply because Enoch is taking us through the 10 points of correspondence in the Tree of Life philosophy. The cloud itself is the head of the Tree of Life in a nutshell, and the reason for its appearance at every one of its 10 heavens, as the reader will discover, since divine consciousness is reflected in the human mind. The 10 Sephirot, are also mirrors used for self-assessment and understanding and self-development and attainment. Sort of butcher that words here, folks. This goes back, guess what? This goes to parts of this shows are the, not the Kundalini, Kabbalah, which are, as you're in the sitting position, it's revealing the Kabbalah, not the standing position. And these are all Hebrew words. And the very top one is Kether. And hold on a second, I'll show you this book. So a couple of years ago, actually, Phil recommended to me to read this book. Okay. And it's kind of like, okay, all right, I'll buy it. I trust you. See what happens. And so this is a great book. It shares the whole idea of Kabbalah, okay, which is again revealing something deeper than what we really realize. It's not that expensive. This is one here, illustration here, the colors. You'll notice that. This is called the Kabbalah Traditions of Hidden Knowledge. Knowledge. We all need knowledge in order to find wisdom. You see. Anyway, kind of got off on a tangent here. Sorry. We'll read this chapter 7, probably the last one here. Of how Enoch was taken on to the second heaven. Quote, verse 1, and those men took me and led me up on the second heaven. Hokmah, Hokmah, which means wisdom, or Sephirot, Sefirot. And I bet you that's one of the words up here too, maybe. And showed me darkness, which is the abyss, greater than earthly darkness, you see. And there I saw prisoners watched, awaited the great and boundless judgment. And these angels were dark looking, more than earthly darkness, and incessantly weeping through all hours. Verse 2. And I said to the men who were with me, quote, wherefore art these incessantly tortured? End quote. That's a question. They answer me, These are God's apostates, meaning those who do not recognize divine God, who obey not God's commands, but took counsel with their own will, that is their self-righteousness, and turned away with their prince, that is the devil, who also is fastened on the fifth heaven. And he goes on and explains, as the reader can see from the diagram of the tree of life applied to the human body, the fifth heaven is the fifth Sephirah, and corresponds with Geburah, meaning power, and, quote, the essence of judgment and limitation, and corresponds to awe and the elements of fire, where the, quote, prince of darkness has his throne, also referred to as the lower mind, which is a key illustration here to show you when the lower mind has nothing to do with wisdom. It's called Ephraim in Greek with a gematria of 666. So he has an illustration of this. I don't know where I don't know if he's got this. Yeah, he does. He shares it. I think he's. Yeah, this is I'd like to be able to share this, but I can't share it. This is revealing something here. The number of the beast and the light of the world. So on one side, the light of the world on the left-hand side here, and on the right-hand side, the nature of the beast. Now, there is no beast. The beast is revealing your own flesh, you see. The light of the world is revealing what you have, your higher mind, your spirit. So the white hair of hoary Cronus is Saturn. That's on the light of the world. I have to ask Phil where he gets this at. I'd love to have this. This is really well done, I think. On the other side, the number of the beast. And this says Hoe Nukon, which means the conqueror. So the numbers are representing something here. So on the right-hand side. On the next side, the next one down, on the left side is saying the blazing eyes of wide seeking, that is Zeus, Jupiter. So these are revealing what I would call planets, which represents the, also, more than that though. Then you have on the other side, again, on the right-hand side, epistemology, which is 999, which is intuitive. And then you go back to the left side, we would call this the King's Sword of Aries, which is Mars. So these are revealing the planets, but also revealing the zodiac signs in you. And you have what we call, let's see if I can read this right. This looks like Isusis, which means higher mind, which is 888. So these on the, I think these on the right-hand side are revealing what I call the gematria in some ways by the numbers. Again, they cleverly show these things, but most of us are not aware of this. So the next one comes onto the left side, the shining face of Helios, which is the sun. And we come back to the other side, which is Star Ross, when the right is the cross, 777. The next one back to the left is the chiton and girdle of Aphrodite, which is Venus. Now, as we see this, this is a body. The very top one at the top is the light of the world and the number of the beast. Okay, so they're representing what I see is the spirit and flesh. Flesh on the right-hand side, spirit on the left-hand side. And you'll see from this deal here, as I look at this in a different color and see if we can change that a little bit better, it's what's coming out. And he has what we call behind him, he has 7 stars. I didn't recognize it in the darker color here. He has 7 stars on his left-hand side, as I look at it here. He also has, and he has what I call a cross, but it's actually with a circle around it. So is those the 4 elements, the four fire, water, air, and earth? Of course, I think that's what he's speaking of. And he also, with his mouth, he has a sword coming out of his mouth, which is talking about truth. Sharper than anything. In other words, truth. Very direct, very straightforward. Doesn't play games. Okay, then we continue on. So when we talk about 666, that simply means a lower mind. So see how the church is misunderstanding this, especially those who are involved in the evangelical churches, also to do with Scofield, as he talked about these things. He gets it all wrong. It's all, scares people to death. The next side, on the left side, is called the swift feet of Hermes, which is Mercury. The next side is epithelium, meaning desire, which is 555. We go back to the left, and somehow I've got, what I've gone through here. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So on the right hand, there are 8 aspects, and on the left hand side is the 7. Interesting, because the 7 are important. Again, revealing something deeper. Spiritual. Your 7. What do you call them? What's inside of you? I can't think of it right now. Sorry. The last one here is the wave dash murmuring voice of, quote, Selenians, the moon. That's the last one left. We'll have 2 going here on the right. So the next one is called Serpent Coil, 444. And then the last one is 333, which is sensuality, which reveals, again, the flesh. This graphic above is from the Apocalypse Unsealed by James M. Price, P-R-Y-S-E, republished by Alpha Editions in 2019, and personifies what we call salvation symbolically. I don't know if I can get in the full picture here. I'll come back to it maybe. So let's see. The higher mind, in contrast, is known as Jesusus, meaning Jesus, with a gematria of 888. The highest achievement of the individual salvation corresponds to the conqueror, with a gematria of 1000. With rational developed thinking, we overcome and mature our raw emotional responses, which leads us astray when taken too far. There's a fine line between love and hate. Yes. People love someone, such and such, a lot of times to do with attributes they see that they don't have, which attributes would make sense, looking for some attributes that you do not have. But unfortunately, you get also the attributes that are negative in that person too. That's why it's so critical to make sure, which I never got married, but the point simply is you better make sure who you're marrying, because you don't know in reality. Let's go to number 3 here, verse 3. And I felt great pity for them, and they saluted me and said to me, quote, Men of God, pray for us to the Lord, end quote. And I answered them, quote, Who am I? I'm a mortal man, that I would pray for angels. Who knoweth whether I go, what will befall me, or who will pray for me? So chapter 7 ends with a confirmation that we each are responsible for ourselves primarily. Yes, we are. His life is about that also. If you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school. If you want to be a mechanic, you go to either practice that at some shop and learn how to become a craftsman, or you go to tech school. If you want to be a builder, you do the same thing in a tech school, or you work as an apprentice under someone and learn the skills of someone who's building a house. Eventually, you lead to the point that maybe you're smart enough to become a builder. You see. So let's continue on, and So chapter 7, I'm kind of going to ends with confirmation that we each are responsible for ourselves primarily. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. We're not here to get money. We're not here to be praised, such and such. But I'm sure in the past in my life, I've done those things, you see. So asking others to pray for us is futile and desperate when we have already lost our way. We need to be praying for ourselves. In fact, Phyllis made a point one time, simply is, don't ask me to pray for you. That is your responsibility to pray for yourself, to have the right heart and right mind in order to lead to ascension. In other words, it is more important or helpful to point the way. But these are those who are at the gates of reckoning, and with nowhere else to go, they can only look away. The weeping is from the loss of missing heaven. Think about that greatly, folks. The weeping is from the loss of missing heaven, when you had another opportunity here to do that. That's what he's sharing here. I'm not trying to put any guilt on anybody. That's not what this is about. This is the revealing of what, and also the weeping from a child who comes into this realm. I think that simply they are also weeping, oh no, I've got to go through this again. Not understanding, see. Now, the realization without the universe is getting in our way and clouding our view of reality. The only one who can set us straight is us. It's our responsibility. We have eternal relationship with ourselves. This passage helps us understand that there is a reckoning to face. We come to life with a natural path to follow if we stay true to ourselves. If we do not, we let others dictate our course, and they will always steer us in their direction, not ours. That should scare the fuck out of you. Seriously, folks. There's so many people out here are deceivers. Okay? Obviously, this takes us off our path. Of course it does. This proves another cannot take our place in life. In other words, we're responsible for ourselves. Nothing else. No one can help us. It's our ball. We carry the ball. It's our hand. It's your responsibility. It's like for a game of football, when you give the football to the guy who's running the ball, he can do two things positive in some ways. I mean, not two things, but one, make more yards, so to speak, without fumbling the ball. So when you do not move forward in some ways, but you fumble, meaning in the reality in life, you fumble the opportunity to ascend. You had the opportunity because it's a gift. You see, you're carrying the football as a gift in some ways, and you fail to see it, or you never even get to that point, you see. So we produce our own salvation, imitation by extension, and cannot directly save another. We can't. But we can share these things with those, because the world is asleep and has no idea what's going on. And maybe for those who have a desire to find out deeper things. We're going to go with, this looks like a pretty short chapter, maybe. So we'll try this one here. Chapter 8 is of the assumption of Enoch to the third heaven. And that's interesting. What is the third heaven? Okay, that goes back to this book here. Verse 1, and those men took me thence and led me up on the third heaven, which is Binah, B-I-N-A-H, which is understanding. I think we can get back to this page here if I can find it. All the colors, which are easier to spot here, black and white. Yeah, what is Binah? See if I can find it here. Maybe this is in, unfortunately it's not here. Oh, yes, it is. Sure is. What it means is simply understanding what Phil's saying here. It's on the right-hand side over here. Understanding eventually will lead you to ascension, which is the Keter, or the crown. The crown. Scripture speaks about the crown, the Keter. These guys are sharing you truth. They may not have the ascension, but they are revealing truth even in this symbolic way, the Kabbalah. Anyway, back to the chapter 8 here. And placed me there, and I looked downward and ran the produce of these places, such as he has never been known for goodness. Verse 2, and I saw all the sweet flowing trees and beheld their fruits, which were sweet smelling, and all the foods bore by them bubbling with fragrant exaltation. And in the midst of the trees, that of life, that is verse 3, in that place whereupon the Lord rests is where, not where, but when he goes up into the paradise. And this tree, that is called cloud, is of ineffable goodness and fragrance and adored more than ever existing thing. Again, revealing a story. Here is the great and sweet smelling fresh as a daisy, that is the cloud of heaven again, otherwise known as the tree of life, where the Lord rests at paradise. The, quote, tree of ineffable goodness, end quote. And on all sides it is from gold, G-O-L-D, looking, that is, as a solar body, and vermilion, that is a red color, meaning love, power, and purity, and fire-like, and covers all. And it is produced from all fruits. Verse 4, its root is in the garden of the earth's end. And 5 says, and paradise, that is the cloud, Eden, is between corruptibility, that is the physical nature, and the incorruptible, meaning the spiritual realm. So they really are showing you, even in the Bible, these certain words here are revealing also. Now, this is in the book of, again, God was talking about here real quick, the book of Enoch. So, getting all caught up in excitement, sorry about that, but this is good stuff. So the cloud is being described with associations such as the solar body, making it gold looking, and vermilion, which is red in color like the cloud, symbolic bloodletting. If the cloud is the alpha/omega, beginning and the end, it must associate with all fruits between. Its roots is at zero, the beginning of time and space, the Garden of Eden at the world's end for us. Now, it doesn't mean the world is going to end. It means the world's end with us, meaning when we die, we had the opportunity and we didn't do the job. We didn't pursue the deeper things. It always only works relative to us in sacred texts. The cloud of heaven is the product of the union of spirit and energy, occurs as salvation for each person. The cloud is paradise, meaning, or Eden, and between corruptibility and incorruptibility as the union of energy and spirit. I'm trying to think the Shakti and something else. Can't think of it. But those are revealing again, even in the Eastern world, they're revealing truth. It's Shakti and Shakti, I'm sorry, but it is there. That's what it's revealing. One is, quote unquote, always in motion, always moving, which is representative of the feminine. And one is stationary, which is basically, I would say, principle-minded, but represents the masculine. It also represents it as, it can go into other areas also, but that's what it's really representing. Verse 6, and 2 springs come out which send forth honey and milk. So these are again words that reveal what's inside your head. And their springs send forth oil and wine, and they separate into 4 parts, and go round with quiet course, and go down into the paradise of Eden between corruptibility and incorruptibility. So Phil elaborates here simply, which is it? Honey and milk? Or oil and wine? Is it both? We are getting a lesson in symbolic metaphor. Both, meaning heaven and milk, is oil and wine. They are the same. They are the seraphim, or beams of light that extend from the cloud's body. Each one is referred to here as milk, as honey, as once. Heaven is the land of milk and honey. Again, it's symbolic. It's not physical. referring to true nourishment. Verse 7, and thence they go forth along the earth and have a revolution to their circle, even as other elements. Nobody can possibly understand verse 7 without being an angel. What is this gobbledygook, as he would say, as Phil says? In other words, and thence they go forth along the earth and have a revolution to their circle, even as other elements. So I'm thinking in myself, okay, that's a mystery to me, because now he's talking about a circle. Okay, so circle's infinity. And he's talking about elements here. So there are 4 elements here. So they go forth along the earth. So this, so when you take it literal, you think these are people doing certain things. Could that be it? Who goes forth? Who are they? Who is this? Along the earth. How? Which one? The elements? The earth? Or the earth we are standing on? They are the seraphim, the beams of the cloud, as the earth or physical elements or quality. The cloud has a definite shape and form that comes from how it is made. It is the only aspect of spiritual metaphysics that is physical in quality, and text tells us that it bridges the worlds of spirit and energy. When we turn to face the cloud, we see there are 2 beams of light that protrude towards our position. We're at the end of the left-hand beam, which is of the cloud's right hand. We are at the right hands of the Father of the universe. From this position, looking at the cloud and its spread of beams around the cloud's body. The seraphim project out from all 4 sides of the cloud as a revolution, or to the circle. They're spread around the cloud as other seraphim or other elements, as it means. Seraphim means other elements. The gobbledygook sentence turns out to be an attempt at describing these spread beams all around the cloud, as seen from the first position in the salvation moment. Well, who would know that? Not me, because I haven't ascended. But Phil has, so you'll know that. Enoch continues to describe the nature of heaven. Verse 8, and here there is no unfruitful tree. Of course there's no unfruitful tree in heaven. And every place is blessed. Verse 9, here's another one that keeps going up here. Always remember that the numbers in the Bible reveal something deeper. They're not talking about 300 soldiers. They're not talking about 165 whatever, 365. It has a metaphor event sharing with you. It's not, this is what people really miss because it sounds literal. Verse 9, and there are 300 angels. Well, that's kind of interesting. 300 equals Shin. S-H-I-N. So, what does it mean? What does Shin mean? Is it in here? The Kabbalah? That's not the right one. Hold on a second here. I don't see it. So 300 is a word for Shin, meaning crown or the cloud. Very bright, who keep the garden, and with incessantly sweet singing and never silent voices serve the Lord throughout all days and hours. I remember that Phil shared with me when he was going through his phase of being in a state that he wasn't even in the physical. I remember him saying he was in the garden and met the gardener. The gardener is Jesus Christ. You see, that's just another word, a synonym to give you an idea of what's going on here. 10, verse 10. And I said, how very sweet is this place? And those men said to me, that's interesting. He stops there. I guess, so that's the end of the verse, chapter 8. Let's see what we got here. Okay, 9's pretty short, so we'll try to get this one in. It's not that, but a couple paragraphs here. Chapter 9 is showing to Enoch of the place of the righteous and compassionate. That is, this place, O Enoch, is prepared for the righteous. who endure all manner of offense from those that exasperate their souls, who avert their eyes from iniquity and make righteous judgment, and give bread to the hungry, and cover the naked with clothing, and raise up the fallen, and help injured orphans, and who walk without fault before the face of the Lord, and serve him alone, and for them is prepared this place for eternal inheritance. So, this sounds very literal. It sounds like, oh, this is something, this is what the church would have no problem with sharing this, because simply it's talking about giving. You need to keep your eyes from iniquity, and you make right, good decisions, and you give bread to the hungry, and you cover the naked, so you help these people out. So this is the idea of the physical aspect when people see it and think it's it's a literal interpretation. And raise up the fallen. In other words, you help injured orphans. So this is what churches do. They actually try to help people in this regard, but they missed the point. They missed the point. This place is the cloud of heaven. This is again revealing what's going on inside your head. That is prepared for the righteous, those who follow reason and truth to his own end at zero. Not by, quote unquote, being emotionally involved in all kinds of things today, because that's what you can see around you. It's a different perspective. By choosing to understand truth in life, meaning how things really exist, regardless of how we appear to the outside world, we naturally end up at heaven to prove it. We only need to prove the truth to ourselves. We don't have to prove it to anybody else. Okay? We cannot prove it to others because people are not there. But we can express ourselves authentically about it, you see. Those who, quote, walk without fault before the face of the Lord, end quote, refers us to angels who find themselves in front of the cloud of heaven. That is Jesus Christ himself again. Without fault, end quote, because perfection from the spiritual point of view is seen as authenticity with the self. In other words, being self-honest. That's what this is about. When you come to the realization, you did somebody wrong, you need to fess up with yourself and say, I blew it. And do not make excuses. Okay? If you make excuses, you're trying to cover that up, trying to be self-righteous. You see. Instead of being realistic and saying, I blew it, I messed up. Move on. So when we turn our attention to our own center, we turn our attention to God, not in a selfish way to the exclusion of the world, but an honest sense of recognition. That is, quote, injured orphans may conjure the image of children left vulnerable, but refers to people who are saved in Middle Ages. The word naked, the naked are covered in clothing, end quote, of the spiritual calm of the cloud of heaven. Every statement refers to becoming saved as an angel. From here, everything goes. That is, Pete Tong. I don't know what that means. I'll have to ask him that. And we're going to stop here. This is chapter 10. I'm going to stop here in this book here. Thank you for being here. So hold on a second here. I've got a little issue. I don't know what the deal is. There we go. So I got to see who else correspond. Okay. Okay, let's see if I got some work. I got some correspondence here. Let's see. Okay. So I got someone named Plumpy. I guess that's how you pronounce it, Plumpy. Are you an Orthodox Christian, Phil? I'm not Phil. Okay. No, Phil's not a Christian. I mean, he's not an Orthodox Christian. Okay, I can answer that one pretty easy. Mr. Menza, hi Brant, hope you're well. I'm just rewatching yours and Phil's last chat about Enoch. Thank you, Phil. I said Phil. Thanks for the comment, Mr. Menza. Is Brant talking about Phil's book? Yes, I am. I'm talking about Phil's book. That's what I am. But I also elaborate on it and give some of my perspective. That's a good word. So thank you for answering that for me, Mr. Menza. I don't pay attention when who was in here until later because I'm reading the book. So first time here, is Brant an Orthodox Christian then? No, I'm not. I'm not a Christian, period, in that state of being. I never have. I grew up in the church, went to seminary, and discovered that basically it wasn't teaching me the truth. But I didn't know that, but I knew something was wrong. So this has been a pilgrimage since probably since I was 42, 41 or 42, somewhere in 2001 or two. So it's been over 20 years. So I've been seeking these things. Phil has done several chats with Brant. Yes, I have. This last one was interpreting the Book of Enoch. Well, this is, yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Menza. Brant has realized that religious Christianity is fake. Yeah, the Bible is not to be taken as literal, but is symbolic. Okay, let's see what else. And Mr. Menza says, Bible explains the ascension process, which is why we are here, to become angels. That's correct. The only reason why we're here. Phil, by the way, is the only one who has achieved this. He's the only one I know of. And that's why we all need to be, aware of that, because simply is he's been there. So he gives a idea, a path for us to understand these deeper things. And so if, in other words, if Phil was not here, we would still be, we're still lost. But in reality, with him sharing this information, it allows us in some ways to understand what he's talking about in a different way. And I've been talking with Phil for roughly since August of last year. I did some audio talks with him early on, and then later I decided to actually interview him on my channel, Discerning What Is True. So that's why. But I was in touch with Phil a couple of years before that. In fact, Phil recommended a couple books for me to read. And I bought the books. I wasn't ready. So it took another couple of years, basically. I was pursuing some other things. Again, it was a spiritual part, yes. A gentleman named Richard Rose. And most are he's talking about Zen, what Richard Rose spoke about. And those who are involved in that group, I began to figure out there's something wrong. Richard Rose had already passed away. In other words, he's been gone for a while, in the late 1990s. But the idea about when I began to see things that were cracks to me that showed that simply that the group hadn't found the truth. They think they have, but they haven't. Most believe there's a step, and what they're thinking about is to do what I would call, in some way would say, I don't know anything about Kundalini. I just know simply what Richard Rose spoke about. And it simply is that he thinks that he had this, he didn't even call it ascension. He just thinks simply as he was one with God. And I'm not doubting his credibility in that way, but he's mistaken. It's very clear that the whole key of what we see in the Catholic Church is very key, even shows true. Symbolically, that's what they're showing. The silver and gold key. It's like this, and the keys are like that, and the silver key, and the gold key. And Phil has explained it very clearly to me. Simply, it's the part of it. Most people have done the first part, but don't know it, or they think they know it, which is the silver key. They had some type of event that they met God. They met God. Seriously, they did. I'm not doubting that. But they don't ask the questions, why did it happen to them? They never asked what we call pondering questions. Why did God, quote unquote, meet with me? Because no one in that group knows that. You see, they don't know that. All they know is simply they had this thing they needed, some type of, they met God within themselves. And I don't doubt that in some ways, they don't. But they didn't do the second thing, which is the key of gold. to ask and ponder the questions, why me? Why did this happen to me? What was the purpose in this? So I met God. But their lives never changed. Nothing changed again. And this is the dude was in. So in the Eastern world, they don't have the truth neither. And that's not only the Kundalini thing a bit, such and such. I never experienced it. Neither is Phil. And people who have met the first part, met God, they don't ask the questions, why me? Why ponder these things, which is what happened to Phil after he came back from Angkor Wat, which was simply ponder these things. The perspective simply is, okay, okay, I've got these things, such and such. Da, da, da. But why did I meet God? What did I do? In other words, a very humble heart, and then begin to reason so. Because most people get all happy about, oh, I met God, such and such. But they don't realize simply is there's a second part to the story here, a complete story, completing the book. So that's what the goal is representing. And so I know that Phil has explained this to me, as well as I recollect. He spent time pondering this. Basically, he ate and slept. And he kept asking himself, why me? Why me? And there are more questions than that. Pondering this whole episode that took place at Angkor Wat. So Phil is as real as can be. In fact, I don't know anybody else as real as he is. It's a testimony of who he is. Okay? So Phil has given his time and efforts to help mankind. That is his sole purpose here, as he's become an angel. And if you doubt that, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. Most people don't understand that. And they won't understand it unless something happens to them. And that's why Phil knows these things. And then Phil's able to, quote unquote, go into the Bible. In fact, he's done many talks. And I'm assuming that basically when I came up from the Christian background, he began to ponder the questions I had. And that's why he's dealing with the books of the Bible. That's why he shares that, because there may be someone out there who grew up in the church as me and others, doesn't matter, Protestant or Catholic, to reveal truth to them. So he's showing his love for truth, and he's showing his love to us as people who are living on this planet to find the truth. The stumbling block from almost 99.9999%, in fact, just about everybody, is to do with the literal perspective, the historical perspective. That is the huge stumbling block for most people. They believe there's a Jesus Christ who came here from heaven, when that doesn't make any sense. Hello? Why would God enter this picture? Why would God enter this realm? Doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it doesn't, because God is holy. Why would God come here? You see, that's the question. And back to the 16 crucified saviors that explain simply, these are stories to reveal truth. That's what it's about. And I know the author, and I can't think of his name. He's not a well-known author, and this book was written way back in the 1860s. This book is written over 160 years ago. Man, you can go to www.archive.org and find it, and download it and read it. It's there. It's available. So anyway, it's about an hour and 30 minutes here, so I need to quit. So thank you for being here, guys. Thank you for the comments. If someone asks me a question, like it simply is to do with, I believe these certain things, such and such. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go there. That's because that's just not true. I don't care what you have to say. I mean, it's a big deal. That doesn't mean anything. I'm not interested in playing politics. Okay, have a good day. Take care. See you. Hopefully, we're going to try to meet. By the way, I was going to say, we're going to try to meet tomorrow for a little short period of time, me and Phil. So if this works out, we'll do it tomorrow morning as the typical time at 9 a.m. If it doesn't, we'll try again. Okay. Again, he'll probably be talking about some of the things that I'm talking about today. So thank you. It's not exactly chapter 5. It's it's the second part of the book, which is but this was part of 5 of his book entitled The Book of Enoch. So thank you, and we'll get eventually to the end of the book. Also, very good stuff, as Phil shared. All right, take care. Have a good evening. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.